Hey everyone. Um, so I'm going to try to make this flow as best as possible. I was going to write something and read it, but I think I just kind of want to let the information come. Um, Yesterday, a friend of mine posted something about knowing the difference between the stars and the flesh. And for some reason, it really triggered me to want to share a lot about my perspective, my awakening journey, and what I've come to understand specifically in regards to the stars and the flesh, and also um, a lot about truth and grace and what's going on in the world right now. Um, so my response to my friend was that there's no difference actually. Um, there's no difference between the stars and the flesh. And when I say that, you know, my truth and my perspective has come from my journey. It comes from my heart. Um, my understanding comes from my heart. I am not religious. I am not, well versed or studied in Gnosticism or um, really anything. I am 100% average in every way. I'm a mom and a wife and all of these mundane daily, labels that we give ourselves and that we perform in this mundane life that we all live. But what I've come to understand and what Spirit has shown me is that myself and everyone else is actually a whole lot more than that. And for the longest time, I was thinking, oh gosh, why should I share anything that I understand? Because, I'm just your plain old average person. Um, and it's becoming increasingly noticeable to me in my daily uh, journey and my understanding that that's exactly why. It's exactly the reason I should share because I am very average. And so I'm a testament to the fact that, this isn't about perfection, this this humanity, you know. Um, they think it's about perfection and they try to sell it as perfection, but honestly, it's not perfection. It's about authenticity. It's about coming to the understanding of who you are, why you're here, how you're not living in truth. And when we say truth, it's not like someone else's truth. It's about your truth. Are you living your truth? Or are you living um, masks of who you think you should be, doing things that, oh, you think you should do? We put so many expectations and weights on each other and ourselves that it's almost impossible to live what I call truth. And it's becoming more and more clear that people like me are being shown that we have this greater understanding and we have to start to step into that. um, a lot of people will have dreams and visions like I've had, who kind of show us who we are and the energy that we hold, and they get really caught up in that archetype, and they personify it, and they you know become somewhat delusional about being a specific archetype or a specific being or anything like that, instead of embodying the energy that symbol is meant to uh, harness in your life and in your journey. And that's kind of about mastering the archetypes too. But at any point you could get stuck in any of those archetypes and just say, I am this and I am that. Well, technically we are all of it. We are we are all of it. We are fractals of source. There is no separation. In fact, separation is the biggest lie there is. I mean, when I think of it, the beauty of everything Even garbage, okay, and this may be a kind of a funny thing or funny way to look at it, but even garbage on our planet and elsewhere, wherever there may be garbage, is a miracle. Anything that exists should be treated with reverence. And I know it sounds crazy, but if we understood who we are and we understood that there is no separation, there is no separation between you and plant life or you and animal life, there is no separation between you and a table. If it exists, it is a part of you. It is a part of source. It is a part of all. Um, and there is no separation. And we've really lost touch with the divinity of everything. It's why we don't see cathedrals that you walk into and you just feel a spiritual presence. It's why we, get so involved with our mundane tasks in life. We don't create things. We don't put effort and time into things the way we used to. And what I think it really is it's lacking the movement of spirit. What I like to think of when they refer to the passion of Christ, we are lacking the passion of Christ moving through us. That drive and that desire for the reverence for the beauty and the divinity of all that is. And that's not a God somewhere out there. That divinity is in every molecule and particle and everything in existence. That divinity is indescribable in in its presence with us. And it's really the only thing that we can seek to find true fulfillment within us. And as long as we're not fulfilling from that divinity of understanding and we're not acting from that place of passion inside, which is really why I'm speaking right now, because I feel it. I have this fire inside that I want to share. And I've stopped myself for so long because I'm like, well, who am I to share? You know what? I've been shown who I am to share. Everyone has divinity in them. And if they're connected to that divinity, then they have something to share. That may be, you know, beautiful art that inspires the passion in others. That can be, beautiful words that inspire passion in others. That can be motivational speak. That can be just sharing a story or sharing their journey like I'm trying to do right now. But all of it is passion. It's Christ moving. It's our divinity coming through us once we've understood and made that connection. And I think that's really what kind of triggered me yesterday about the stars and the flesh, because once we understand that then all the flesh becomes divine. We are divinity and we are the stars. There is no separation. So we are the light and we are the vessels that hold the light, and we are to orate that light out um, through that passion that we feel. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And, you know, I've been I've felt like I'm supposed to hold back on speaking. I've been in a journey in the process of becoming and figuring out how spirit is moving in my life. So I'm really like a witness to spirit moving in my life through dreams and through um, different events that have happened since my awakening, and even before that, really. And I'm not going to talk so much about my personal journey. I'm just going to say that I've given myself the permission to share my truth because I've been shown that I have the authority to do so. But it doesn't mean that my truth has to coincide with your truth. It doesn't mean that, all it means is this is where I'm at right now, and I'm sharing it, and I'm choosing to give myself that permission to share. And you can do and take with it what you will, or not. It's really all up to you. And I'm not saying it's all truth. I'm just saying this is what I've garnered in my journey. And to me, it's what I have filtered from all input that I've received to this point, how I have discerned truth in my heart. And it saddens me because I've heard some people feel like they don't know how to do that. That, you know, given all these options and AI coming and the media and social media and everything that's around us, our lives have become so loud and so complicated that, I've had people say, well, I'm not going to be able to tell. I don't have that. And it's really sad to me because we all have that. It's about giving yourself the permission to allow yourself to discern truth, to say yes or no to something or someone that you feel, is an expert or an authority. You are the only authority. Um, and we all need to start waking up to that, because as time goes on, that's going to be more and more uh, important to do so, to become your own authority, okay? Which is also why I'm speaking. um, and, I don't know how, there's so much to why I haven't spoke, and I'll go into that a little bit. A lot of it has to do with, sometimes I feel like this awakening process and the becoming and the Christ within rising and the passion. Sometimes I think it's timed, because I've seen in my life how everything has been in perfect divine alignment and timing. So, it's hard for me to think that um, what I share is going to make a difference to anyone, because if it's their time, it's time. And if it's not their time, it's not their time. But then, because of divine timing, if I feel like sharing and the passion is moving through me, then I'm sharing at exactly the right time, and exactly the right person who needs to hear me speaking will hear me speaking, and they will gain a piece of enlightenment in their journey. And I guess that's kind of how it just snowballs, and I have to stop worrying about it so much, because I get caught in paradox quite often. Um, because I start to realize how much effect we do have on others. And then I realize how perfect everything is. So then I don't want to affect others. And anyway, it just goes around and around like that for me often. So I just need to kind of break out of that. So forgive me if I just ramble, because I'm going to cover a lot right now. And eventually I may come back and just parse out, what I'm talking about into pieces, and make it a bit more digestible, or not. This could be just a one-off thing, and it may be kind of long, and you can come back and listen to the rest later. I don't know. But about divinity and stars. So I've been shown in a dream that we are the stars. And really, it's kind of like we each carry light. So we are like scrolls, light scrolls. And I'm assuming that is our DNA. I wasn't shown specifically in that dream about DNA, but I'm assuming that the light scroll is our DNA, is what we carry. And we carry, I believe, all of the truth and all of the knowledge that we need in this physical existence. So we have just forgotten how to draw on that truth. We've lost our divinity. I shouldn't say we've lost it. We've denied our divinity through acquiescence to other people's truth. We've given away our sovereignty. We've given away our intuition. And I believe that was, part of the beginning of the Bible. I wrote a post on X about that, and I believe it's all purposed. I believe that, because I have to believe that everything is purposed and in a divine time, and exactly as it should be at every moment. and always going for the good of all, which is always going for the good of God. I have to believe that because that is a belief and a rule that I have made for myself. So, and you can agree with that or not, but that's one way that I hold faith always. I don't play into the fears. I don't play into all of the separation and marginalization and labeling. But I watch gracefully as all of this rolls out because I know there's purpose to it. I know that it's awakening people. I know that there's lessons to be had. And regardless of the outcome, I know that it's for the best of all of us. So that brings a kind of peace that you can't get, when you're trying to rack your brain about fixing everything or and that kind of thing. And that brings me to another topic. Often, I've tried to go on these spaces with X. I've stopped recently because for some reason we can't get ourselves to, even in the love and light communities, we can't get ourselves to just be in the now. We can't get ourselves to stop being taskmasters. Okay. If you believe that everything is going to the good of God and everything is going to the good of all, we need to stop being taskmasters. Another dream that I was shown was a little being, and there was kind of like chaos or the primordial, right? And there was no structure to it. It was really just like a blank canvas in a way. And then there began to be building blocks, right? And these building blocks came out of this chaos. And from what I was being shown, the beginning of time came when this structure came out of this chaos. And to me, if I were to equate that with the Bible or Adam and Eve or whatever other mythology you would like to equate that to, I see that as the time when we took something and placed it outside of ourselves as a reference point. Okay. So, like with the snake and Adam and Eve, I feel like Eve took something to be true that was outside of herself. She listened to the snake rather than her internal guidance and did something. And so that marked the beginning of this trajectory of time that we're in. And equating that to my dream, from that point, when we have time starting with that building block coming out of the primordial, that's creation. That is, it could be beautiful. There's all we have is just the seed of creation, right? So we have our first building block. And time starts, now we have a reference point. And because we have this reference point, we forget that there's a primordial where all possibilities exist, where everything is a potential, right? So we build off at this block, and I saw this being just, bouncing from block to block, and the blocks just kept building on top of each other and getting bigger and bigger. And, we're kind of in that cycle right now where what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep on building off of what we already know, the blocks that are already in place, the structures that have just gotten so worn down and tired and stuff that we just continue to drudge on and rebuild and add on. And, at some point there has to be something that pretty much destroys that phase of building, that creation, right? And so then you come to the end of the Bible. Well, you can continue that cycle over and over and over again all you want. But what I propose is, if you find who you are and you have the passion of Christ, you may not know the next step because you're in paradox, right? You're like, okay, well, so I create I'm in the image of God. What is my next step? You know, you can either sit in that paradox or begin the slow process of basically what they say, dying to yourself. So, you know, you can't go back to the primordial or draw from the primordial if you've got all of these beliefs and all of these labels and all of this separation to hold you in this 3D structure, you know. And I love the Love Light community. They're beautiful people, but a lot of it is, you know, oh, we need to get these people together and we need to start doing this and that. No, we don't, because that is not, well, at least for me, I cannot say for others. For me, I am holding my sights on going back to the primordial and finding that new block to build with, okay? I don't want to continually be stuck in this process of time and continual addition to building blocks that have done their time, okay? I am completely happy with the fact that this, what we have, was very purposed, and the humanity that we understand was immensely beautiful and rich and powerful, and the intricacies of the human emotion and what we do to ourselves, what we do to others in our forgetting, and then the beauty of remembering is the most amazing. And I can't even put it into words. When you really, really, really understand the depth and the height of emotion and feeling and sensation that we are capable of as humans in this 3D realm, on this timeline that we are on, with these specific building blocks, the richness of the experience that we have provided for spirit and ourselves in our evolution and our growth can never, it is the grail, okay? That's what I've been shown. It is the grail. The darkness and the light, everything in between, have taught us how to build the vessel to hold the light, which is the truth. And the truth may look dark to the light and light to the dark, but we could not move forward with a new creation from the primordial in a new timeline without first having that grail in order to understand the immense task of responsibility for the immense power that will come to us as we start to understand where we are headed next. Those of us who know who we are and who are beginning to see and develop this new paradigm. Okay? The story does not end, it continues and it keeps going. But not often does it end in this way, I don't believe. I believe that this is the end of something. I made a song about this and I can only express it through that song. People don't give my AI songs a chance, but I really, really would like you to. It's talking about the sorrow at the end of a book, okay? And these AI songs, they are able to express how I feel in ways that I'm not able to in words. But if you can imagine coming to the end of the most beautiful, most heroic, most emotionally driven, and just I have no words for it. The story that has been told, and it doesn't matter the good and the bad, because all of it is so magical and beautiful and has given us something that we could not have had any other way than the way it was done. And yes, I do believe that times will be easier at some point when we do switch into what's coming next. But imagine your favorite book and the best book of all time being closed, and the sorrow at the end of the story that there is no real sequel to this story. It's just the end of the story. And yes, you can go back and it be in the Akash and you can go read about it, but we got to be a part of it, and that is a miracle. And I don't care what life you've lived or haven't lived, or what anybody's been through, all of the suffering and all of the joy. Without that juxtaposition of emotion, there is no way we could have gone through and experienced what we've experienced. And I'm not saying that there is any uh, I'm not condoning anyone who does harm or does bad, but we are truly lost in many ways. We have forgotten our divinity. We have forgotten how everything is a part of ourselves. Just the fact that we throw so much garbage away, we have forgotten that that's a part of ourselves. That's how we are treating ourselves. Just the fact that our dwellings are so far from God, from nature itself. They're unnatural, you know. Just that in itself, we're hurting ourselves. We're showing that we've forgotten our divinity and our closeness with everything. And if we continue to look at it as taskmasters, well, we've got to fix this before we can fix that, then where is our faith? Because I know you all know where we're at. I know, the clock is ticking and we're running out of building blocks for this story, right? So why are we still mastering things? Why are we trying to control things in that way? I think it's really trying to show us that we have no control in the way we think we do. If you think that everything in your life is purposed and on time and exactly the way it should be at every moment, and you embody that and you believe that as true, then why would there be any fear at all of doing the right thing? There should be no fear, right? A lot of what happens that we consider evil or in bad taste or sinning, gossiping, whatever it may be, a lot of that is stemming from us not understanding our divinity. Because if we understand our divinity, there would be no comparison, there would be no competition. We would know that we're perfect exactly as we are. We're beautiful. There is no reason to be a part of something because we are a part of everything. There would be no reason to, have to be a part of a cause and, you know, make others see things the way that we feel they should be seen, because we would just be content with the fact that we're whole in ourselves and our ideas, right? We wouldn't be following people or feeling like we need some kind of external validation or external forgiveness or external channels to the divine. We would give ourselves the permission to be honest, and that's another huge topic, which I'll probably talk about here in just a minute. To be honest, that's huge, right? What is truth and what is honesty? We have become so incredibly lost on our path because of obligations and expectations that we place on ourselves and others to a ridiculous extent. And I'm talking just little white lies, right? Nothing that is earth-shattering or hurt that we think hurts other people, but it does. It all plays into what's going on. So instead of being taskmasters, and instead of, having meetings and grouping together and trying to figure out how to solve the world's problems, I think it's about really solving the puzzle of ourselves, right? The honest to goodness truth of who we are. A man was talking about, I think it was actually Jordan Peterson. He was talking about, and this is one of the greatest things I've heard about this topic is you can't be a moral person unless you are acting from a place of knowing yourself. If you're not looking into the dark and you're suppressing and you're not understanding what you hold within, the power that you hold within, and you're taken off guard and you react from fight or flight, your root chakra, how do you react in every given situation? Are you in control of all the archetypes available in your journey, right? Are you a warrior when you need to be a warrior? Are you a magician when you need to be a magician? Are you a leader when you need to lead? This is part of the progress and part of the evolution of our soul. It's what we're learning to do. We're learning to harness power. We act in all kinds of foolish and violent and disrespectful ways when we haven't mastered these concepts of ourselves. Really, we're acting out of fear. And what are we fearing? Without faith, there's fear. And I'm kind of rambling, but I was going to write and I felt like I just kind of wanted to talk, but so forgive me if it's kind of all over the place. So truth. I have all of these theories, and I'm not going to say they're right or wrong, but there's something to be said for the way I am. People say I have rose-colored glasses. The way I am is I hold beliefs and truths within myself that I have no physical proof for. I have no research or understanding to tell me these things. It's things that I allow myself to believe. Yeah, I don't get caught up in them like a delusion. I've learned through hellfire the difference between delusion and physical 3D reality and my responsibilities here. So I'm able to hold this vision of truth or the way things can be that are dissonant to the way things are. And I think that's important, because I do believe we create our own reality, and belief is the limit, right? And for me, belief is my imagination. So, truth. I feel like the answer and what's going to save us, and I don't know how this is going to look, it's just what I feel, is it will be grace. And what I've been shown about grace is not in fact, I've gotten into arguments about this with people. I don't know why, because it's just kind of what I've been shown. I'm not saying this is the way it is for anybody else. What I've been shown is grace is in the middle of two pillars. One of those pillars is judgment, and one of those pillars is compassion. If you lean to either side, judgment or compassion, then you've come away from the truth. Because compassion, and this is where people get so upset because it's such a triggering word, I suppose. I don't know why. I understand the compassion of Christ and the Buddha and all of that. But, and maybe I'm coming more from the divine feminine, and this is what people don't want to hear. And this is why things have been suppressed. And I am not perfect in this area. In fact, I am very, very flawed in this area when it comes to my children, because I have immense fear, and for some reason, I have a really hard time clearing fear for my children. The rest of my life, I've pretty much mastered no fear on that. But so grace for truth. And if I write a book, that's what it's going to be called, Grace for Truth. Again, compassion can turn into enabling, and judgment can turn into degrading others, right? You don't want to do either. Compassion is a really good litmus test to see where someone is at, to see the level of assistance that they do need. What are they capable of? That's a good thing about compassion. Judgment, that's a funny one, because much of the judgment is going to come from the self, honestly. They talk about guilt and shame being some of the lowest vibrations. So what does that say about judgment and yourself, right? People can guilt and shame you, they say, but it's only if you internalize that and you guilt and shame yourself, does that vibration send you directly to hell? And I've experienced it. So, yeah, you're out of alignment with either of those. Grace is the center, the way through, truth. And I feel like tribulation is us finding that truth. How far have we come off path of the truth of who we are, and how far and how, tumultuous is it going to be to get back on path? That's our tribulation. It can be fast, it can be furious, it could be, slow and arduous. Almost always there's suffering when it comes to your tribulation to get back on path, because you really need to see, you need to see what led you off path. You need to see the lessons that you were meant to learn. And often you don't see that unless you're really, really, really drugged through the mud with it. Grace for truth. You know, so here's my imagination and my beliefs and grace for truth and the book if I ever write it. Grandma, I love the sweater that you knitted for me for Christmas because you made it for me. But I'm going to give it to Nancy because I feel like she would really enjoy it more than I do. That is truth. And it is up to your grandma to deal with the emotions and the judgment to handle the truth that you delivered. Okay? It is not up to you to put that sweater in your closet and feel bad every time you look at it because you don't want to wear it and never throw it away. I'm talking about layers and layers and layers of lies that we live in that weigh us down, okay? And this may sound, because of our cultural and our social conditioning that, oh, they're ungrateful. No, I'm ungrateful that I have to lie to people in order to appease their expectations of me. And I am done doing that because it has trapped my energy being a people pleaser, being, socially, politically correct, whatever that may be. But I'm done with that. If I don't like the food that you cooked me, I will politely eat it, but I'm not going to tell you if you asked me if I like it that I like it, just to be polite. Because we have come so far from honoring ourselves, and I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody, or I'm saying everyone should live in that kind of truth. Because you know what? We talk about having telepathy, we talk about having all of these higher understandings and intuitions, but until we take off the veil of who we are and we stand up for that truth, and you as a person receiving that truth on the other end have grace for that person telling the truth, it won't be until then that we will understand who we are, and we will have telepathy. And I'm going to tell you all of those little things like grandma's sweater in my closet that I don't want to throw away because I feel bad, I feel guilty. All of those little tiny things weigh us down more and more every single day. When we are weighed down, we cannot elevate, we cannot transcend. It is that level of grit, of truth that we need to get to. And we need to have grace as we do it. We need to unwind the web that we have created through our forgetting, through giving our power away and our sovereignty and our truth, and the social conditioning of the acceptance and the expectations that we have to for some reason, be responsible for the emotional response that others cannot give you the grace to understand when you're telling them the truth and to be grateful for it. Because you know what? When we start to live that level of truth and we can tell everyone around us that level of truth, that's when they will see themselves clearly. And that's when we will be the mirrors that we are supposed to be for each other, for our growth and for our understanding, and eventually for our joy. Right? Anyway, I think I've probably talked long enough, and that's really the points that I wanted to make for this. And I may just send this to my friend who kind of inspired it with his post yesterday, but or I may post it. I'm not sure, but I love everyone. I really, really do. And oh no, this is not all. I do want to add. When I talk about our divinity within and the passion of Christ, and why there's certain places we can go in and we can feel God, you know, because the people who made those things were operating from that passion. That's where we need to get back to. And when you feel that passion, it does something to you inside of you, right? It makes you feel that passion inside of yourself. And when we feel that, that's kind of a cue to say, okay, I need to find that. I need to find that in me. And you may not build a cathedral and you may not write a great book, but you may do art that, and maybe that art is just something that brings you joy. You know, it doesn't have to be something that goes out to the world, or it's just a piece. And that's the thing. All of the pieces are just as important as any other piece of the puzzle. We're all part of spirit. And like I said, even a table or the garbage, right? Everything has spirit running through it. To me, it feels like a gold line um, that connects me to everything. Even dark, you know, I don't separate myself necessarily from. I understand how I would react and that I would not make choices that other people have made, but that's given who I am. I understand that there are aspects of source and the infinite curiosity, yes, infinite curiosity of source of all of things, that would take other roads, that would do bad things, what we consider bad. And I can feel the part of me that is also a part of them. And so there's an understanding, not a condoning, there's an understanding of how people maybe can get there. And that's what, you know, can just make you so sad, um, if you really get into how lost we become, how much we've forgotten. And it also just shows it's time, right? And it's going to take a lot of us to hit the reset button. Anyway, that's a little piece of the Christ in me that I felt like sharing today. And hopefully it connects with the Christ in you, because that's the beloved. Okay. I love you all. Have a good day.